listening to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
2 certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only 2 best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Hello.
Hey.
We're talking about something near and dear to my heart. Constipation.
Emotional constipation.
Emotional constipation. Actually, constipation is not near and dear to my heart. But we're not going to go there today. We are going to go there emotionally, though. Yeah. So,
with one of our very closest friends in the world. So it was a
Joanna
really
Platt.
fun conversation.
Mm-hmm. Joanna is the queen of feeling her feelings. And we live in a world where people do not feel comfortable feeling feelings. They don't even know how to do it, even if they want to feel their feelings. And we're all suffering from a myriad of symptoms, physical and emotional, when it comes to how often we suppress very normal human emotions.
And we get into those symptoms in our conversation with Joanna. We make it very clear for you to identify, how do I know if I'm emotionally constipated?
And how do I get myself flowing again?
Yes.
In an emotional sense. Yeah. We talk about how to access your feelings and why you should. We make a good case for, I think a lot of you are going to be like, well, duh, I know it's healthy to feel how you feel, but I don't think a lot of us really take it into account or realize how important it is to your ability to feel joy and happiness, that you also feel the grief and the sadness and the pain and the anger, that if you can't feel everything, then you're going to feel nothing. And we get into all of that. So
there's a lot that we miss out on in life when we don't feel our feelings. And so we make it very clear why you should, why we all get mixed up in this dilemma of constipating ourselves emotionally and how to get out of that. So I want to tell you a little bit about our friend, our dear friend, Joanna Platt. She sent us a little bio. So here's what Joanna is all about. Joanna Platt is a life and relationship coach for high achievers who need space to feel their feelings, permission to put themselves first, and guidance on how to do it. Through intuitive, deep coaching conversations that feel like heart-to-hearts. And I can tell you, that's how all conversations with Joanna feel, is like a heart-to-heart. She's here to help you quiet your inner critic and bring your best self to the surface so that you can connect and contribute in both your work and home life. When she's not coaching, you can find her loving her husband, Mike, reading multiple books at one time, and working in coffee shops in DC. Meet Jo and get ready to go deep, feel your feelings, and get your sparkle back at joanna-platt.com.
Joanna's also the host of a podcast, Love Always Jo, which has been around for about a year now. And the whole point of that is to help you feel your feelings and become a whole, happy, healthy, contented, fulfilled version of yourself. And to be able to sort of let that ripple out into the world and kind of you give that gift to other people too. And Joanna's been one of our best friends for the past 5 or 6 years. Day one, coach training is when we met Jo. And she was the first person I was paired with to coach. And within that conversation, she was already sobbing and telling me all of the deepest things about herself. And like, how could I not fall in love with her after that?
Nothing has changed in the years since we've known her.
Nope.
And that's what we love about her. She is also, we mentioned this at the end of the episode, so I won't go too much into it, but she is also the creator of the course Engaged, which is for couples who are engaged. Or you could also be married already.
Or
Absolutely.
you could be just in a really serious relationship and wanting to like connect deeper as a couple and learn how to have a really healthy, happy, awesome partnership.
But it's a really powerful course. I have read through all of the lessons and I can attest it's really a good investment to bring your relationship to the next level.
I know at least 3 couples personally and who have gone through her course and have then gotten married or gotten engaged after her course. And I really recommend. When I get engaged, I'm doing her course. Like, I don't know who you are out there, but just know that my future spouse will be doing engaged with me before we get married. So without further ado, enjoy our conversation with Jo. Hey, Joanna.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Oh my God, I'm so happy that you're here.
We're so excited to have one of our very, very closest friends on as an expert.
What a treat.
I was just thinking, like, is it bad that the two experts that I've had on the podcast thus far are like close friends of mine? And I was like, this podcast is not a democracy. Like, I can have whoever we want on the podcast.
You can use as much nepotism as you want.
Yeah. Is there like a word for friend nepotism? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Right.
But we have some really awesome friends who are really good experts in things. So why not showcase them?
It's not our fault that we know stuff.
Exactly.
No. Well, and so the reason that we want to talk to you is because I couldn't think of anyone who like fits the bill more of feeling your feelings than you. And I have seen you feel all the feelings that are capable for a human to feel. I think in the span of time that I've known you, you're probably the most emotionally available person that I know. So who else would I have wanted to talk to about this?
Yeah. Well, I'm honored. And I mean, grateful that I have friends that allow me to express my full emotional range, because I do have a lot of feelings and people aren't really comfortable with feelings. So I'm grateful that you both have always welcomed me and my feelings with open arms, and really have kind of touted and reminded me that my emotions and my emotional range are a gift, because it doesn't always feel that way.
And the expression of them, the free expression of them, is really a gift. In fact, I think you're an expert both at feeling your feelings in a very healthy, fully expressed way, but also creating a safe space for other people to feel their feelings. You're really good on both sides of that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that that's actually one of the cases to make for feeling your feelings, is that when you're comfortable feeling your own feelings, you're able to be present for and hold space for other people to feel their feelings as well. Essentially, you don't get scared off when other people have feelings. Like, you don't push to shut them down.
Yes.
That's a really good point.
That is, I want to get into that a little bit more. But I guess first, I want to talk about, like, I'm dubbing this conversation like emotional constipation, because I just feel like so many people that I coach and that I meet are suffering from not being able to freely express how they feel, whether that's bottling things up, or they're numbing, or they're just generally like over reliant on their logical mind. And they don't even, I have coached people who literally say, like, I don't really know how I feel anymore. Like, I can't even act like, I don't, when you say feelings, I'm not even sure what you're talking about anymore. So I want to ask you, like, why do we do this? Like, how does this happen?
Well, I think the first thing is that imagine being around people who have a baby, and the baby starts crying. What happens?
You shush the baby.
You shush the baby. You try to fix it.
Yeah, you're like, it's okay, it's okay.
Yep. And then you try to find a solution so that they'll stop crying.
Yeah.
And so you learn from a very young age that emotions are inconvenient, that emotions need to be silenced, need to be shushed.
Yeah.
And so that's what you do. And we learn so much through modeling. And so not only are we shushed, but we don't really see our parents feeling our feelings. And so we don't have good models of how to feel our feelings. That's why we don't know how to do it. Because they learned the exact same thing that we learned. You shush a baby, you try to do whatever you can do to like tamp the feelings down. Feelings are pretty inconvenient.
And so vulnerable.
And it's a never ending cycle. when really a baby is crying and a baby has feelings, like that's how they communicate.
It's the only way they have. They're not, it's not even that they're sad or upset or angry. They just literally need to tell you that they're hungry or that something
and they can't say, I'm hungry right now.
No.
So they express it in a more emotional way.
And I guess that triggers a person's like fight or flight mechanism. That deep instinctual, like, I've got to make sure that this little creature survives. So from the beginning, the parent is responding, whether or not they realize it, from a place of fear.
Yes.
And I'm sure this only gets worse as we get into the workplace because feelings are definitely not allowed there. If you thought they weren't allowed when you were growing up, that feels like it's no wonder so many people who are in the working world feel emotionally constipated, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I mean, it just happens that we spend all of our time at work and feelings aren't allowed there. But frankly, feelings aren't really allowed in many places.
I know. I was like trying to think of a place where they are allowed.
Or even in conversations with friends, a lot of times like you see people start to back away or change the subject or apologize for their feelings. And it's just kind of everywhere, really.
So one of the things I've noticed is that when people don't know how to express how they feel, the reactions they have get really warped. So one of the things I've noticed is that men have been told historically that they're not allowed to have feelings almost at all. Like boys don't cry, suck it up. I mean, even girls are told that too, but especially boys are told that. So one of the only acceptable emotions I've seen a lot of men be capable of expressing is rage. And it gets kind of perverted. And I honestly, like, this is a different rabbit hole, but I honestly think that is why we have so many like angry young men, is because it's the only feeling that is socially acceptable for them to express out loud in front of other people.
Yeah. And even that is kind of questionable.
Right. Well,
especially in the workplace, where it's like, don't rock the boat. Like, so everything just needs to be tamped down, push it down, shove it down. Don't let them see you sweat. But here's the thing. And actually, on my team, like we have to go through the feelings first so that we can come up with a solution. Mm-hmm. And when you do hold space for the feelings and to kind of like a lot of people are like, okay, that's the feeling, but we need to move on to a solution. If you hold space to feel the feeling and to process the feeling, the solution will come exponentially quicker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because the feelings clog up your creative mind.
Yeah.
And so
that's why I use the word constipation. Literally, like we are clogged up with all of the emotion that we have not expressed for years.
Yes.
So what are some what do you think are the signs and symptoms of I feel like we could come up with a laundry list. Maybe we should, because I think that people might not realize how emotionally sort of backed up they are because maybe they're having a symptom or a sign that they don't even really recognize.
Yeah. Well, one would be numbing. And so numbing can look like coming home and like numbing out like in front of the TV.
Yeah, that was like a big one for me.
Or like on social media or on the computer. So, like anytime you're just like on a screen kind of like, and you're not engaged with it or you're not consciously choosing the activity.
People at the stoplight looking at their phones, like when they're driving.
Yes.
That is like such a numbing thing.
Yeah.
Eating can be a numbing thing too.
Yeah.
Numbing your feelings.
And drinking.
With food. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think you see that a lot with women and with men. The drinks are different, but. And also, isn't that what you see people do with babies?
Shove a bottle in their mouth?
If they start crying, give them a bottle or give them a snack to distract them.
Yeah. That's so true.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Like literally just like take their mind off of it with something. And like at that age, it's supposed to comfort them. But that's what we learn, right? We learn that food is comfort and that drink is comfort. Having something in your hand, like tactile, like a phone, can be, it's like almost comforting.
Or something like alcohol that actually numbs your feelings.
Literally is, yes.
Right. And then the other thing you'll see people do, well, busyness is a big feeling number.
Huge.
So people that have way too much on their plates. And I get this. I mean, first of all, this was me. I used to have a full-time job, a part-time job, and then another part-time job. And, that's because who wants to be home alone on their couch on a Tuesday at 8 p.m.? Because that's when your feelings come in.
What was it that you were, I'm just curious, like, what was it you were numbing when you were overworking and just like drowning in busyness? What is it you didn't want to feel?
Inadequacy. Feeling like you're not enough. I mean, that's pretty much what it all boils down to. Feeling out of control.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Like unsure of your direction.
Feeling lonely.
Yeah.
A lot of this comes back to gremlin inner critic stuff that you don't want to listen to or feel or deal with. And your inner critic doesn't want you to feel the deeper feelings.
You want to give people a little, you're the expert on this. You want to give people a little preview of when you say inner critic, what you mean?
It's that voice in your head that's like replaying all the conversations of the day. Like, should I have done this differently? Oh, well, I should have said that. Maybe I should do this instead. It's that like questioner.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the easiest way to.
Yeah. It's like
to
that
say it.
Constantly doubting yourself and in a weird, like
the voice of like, what if?
Yes. Just like either your past, you're looking back to the past and you're thinking of all the things you should have done differently and said differently and regretting, or you're looking to the future and you're future tripping. You're worrying and you're anxious about everything that might happen. Like your inner critic is like the king or queen of those two things.
Yeah. How you've done something wrong, how you might do something wrong, how you are wrong as a human. Yeah, that's definitely that inner critic.
And so like, of course, you don't want to sit with that. Like, it's almost like, of course we numb out. Of course we don't want to feel. Because if that's what you feel like is going to be waiting for you when you have a quiet moment, then you're going to run from that your whole life.
Absolutely.
I wonder if there are any physical symptoms of
yes,
emotional constipation and holding that in, because
yep,
you just described some really good behaviors that are symptoms, but I almost wonder what you might say is going on in your physical body to let you know there's something here that needs to move through, that we need to express.
Yep.
Oh, great question. Well, any type of belly issues.
Yep. That was my lifelong struggle.
So like you could actually be physically constipated, or you could have stomach aches.
Yeah. Or like bloating. Like you're literally, I know, like you hold tension and emotion in your body. That's not even
I think
debatable.
Bloating is like is your body is a defense mechanism, and it's like a puffer fish.
Yeah. Or like a porcupine.
Yeah. Also, like if you grind your teeth.
Yep.
Guilty. I would say shoulder tension.
I was going to just say, I feel like I get shoulder tension when I'm holding too much.
Yep.
It's almost like your shoulders come up by your ears.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Headaches.
Oops, I have those too. I'm like awful. You would think that I had gotten past. I mean, I actually have a lot. I do better with all of these things than I ever have before. But it's amazing how many of these boxes I can still check.
Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah. Even my shoulders hurt just, as we're talking about this. And I got a massage and acupuncture in the last 6 days.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think heartburn is related to fear, like fear bubbling up.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Not being able to take a deep breath. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a literal sign that your body is in fight or flight mode. Yeah. And that you're having some sort of like a pretty, either you're trying not to feel something or you're feeling too much and you're like panicking.
I would also say exhaustion has got to be one of them. Just the exhaustion of continually tamping down those emotions. It's tiring.
General.
Yeah. Well, why would, and, I think it's exhaustion and like oversleeping and insomnia.
Yep.
Right.
So it's like, it can be either one of these.
Yeah. You can fall on any spectrum, really. Right. Any end of the spectrum.
Yeah, exactly.
And, just general anxiety and depression. I think that actually, I was just having a conversation with a client yesterday who was telling me that there have been 2 times in her life where she's been like actually diagnosed as depressed. And she said both times was when I was trying very hard not to feel grief.
Yes.
And she said,
Yes.
I was so afraid that if I went down that rabbit hole, I would never come out. And so I suppressed it. And of course, the irony is that if I had just let myself feel that grief and process that emotion, I would have worked through it so much quicker. But the compulsion to try to avoid it was the thing that weighed me down and like literally made me depressed 2 times in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Depression is like a blanket, essentially. And depression is a warning sign. Like if depression could talk, it would essentially say, there is something here that is too dangerous to feel.
Wow.
And if anxiety could talk, it would say, there are feelings here that we have to run away from.
Yeah.
That we have to outrun.
Yes, definitely. Don't let it catch you.
Depression is like fight, flight, freeze. And there's another one, fawn. Depression is like the freeze or fawn where you just kind of like play dead.
Mm-hmm.
And anxiety is the fight or flight.
It's running away.
Yep.
Yeah. Or attacking it like.
Yeah.
Preemptively.
Right. Yes. And that's where the future tripping comes in of like, okay, how can I get ahead of this? How can I beat this by doing X, Y, and Z and trying to micromanage the situation, micromanaging the people? Again, 2 ends of the spectrum where like depression is like a downer and anxiety is an upper.
Mm-hmm.
Where like you could be constipated or you could have diarrhea, you could have insomnia, or you could want to sleep all the time.
I literally could check all of the ends of the spectrum at certain points in my life.
Oh, yeah. I think we all can.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is an
and
epidemic.
that is such a magical thing because essentially what all of these are, like the body and the mind, like this is all a very wise system.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things are just sending up flags, and all you have to do is pay attention to them.
Before we get into like, you know, what does it actually look like to feel your feelings and how do we do it in a world where it feels so like not safe in so many ways to feel our feelings, I feel like there's at least one more sign and symptom I'm thinking of when you're emotionally constipated is when your reaction to things are disproportionate to what is triggering you. Like you have epic road rage, even though it's just like someone kind of cut you off and it's not a big deal and you should really have forgotten about it 5 minutes later, but you're like furious. Or someone says something to you and it's really like not a bad comment, but you just take it completely the wrong way and you spiral very deeply into like into a pit of despair over it. What else would you add anything to that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of being trigger happy. You know, that's something, and I get that. Like, I understand why that is because, well, a few ways that I could describe this. One, we only have a certain capacity for feelings, and then they start kind of like bubbling over. Mm. So that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And so it, you know, then you have like an explosion.
Yes.
Of like road rage, or like you want to go after that person, like you want to right a wrong. Mm-hmm. Also, those examples are very tangible and you can describe them. And a lot of times, not all of the time, I don't want to say this is all the time because sometimes anger is just about anger. It's not about sadness. But a lot of times people will go to anger to mask sadness.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, right. There's a defense mechanism in that. There's like a protection. Like I look tougher when I'm mad and I don't look as weak and vulnerable. And if I'm just sad and I'm curled up in a little ball, I'm like so open. I'm like so exposed in that state. It feels too raw or something. Yeah. Yeah. Anger is just more active.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into sadness, how to start turning your feelings back on, because I do want to get into that. I think we've already been doing this, but I want to make a really strong case for why it's so important to freely express your emotions and to feel your feelings, because
given how messy we just said it was and how ugly it can be.
It's so vulnerable, it's so exposed, and we've shared some symptoms that are not great about suppressing them. So that's kind of starting to make a case for it. But I want you to paint a picture of what it looks like on the other side when you do more freely express your feelings?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you get to that point?
Yeah. Why should we feel our feelings?
Well, because then you can get on with the business of living. Essentially.
Yeah.
Brene Brown says that you can't numb, like if emotions are a spectrum, you can't chop off the bad emotions and still feel the good emotions. You have to cut it equally. So you cut off.
Yeah.
Like if you imagine a number line, if you're going to cut off the emotions that are, -4 and above, or lower, you also have to cut off the emotions that are +4 and above.
Right. You're working with a very limited range.
Yeah. And so you are actually cutting off your happiness and your capacity for joy and elation and
yes,
even like really good sex, like to really feel that, like elation and release and like ecstasy that kind of comes. You also have to have to feel the other stuff.
Yeah, right. Anything that requires a lot of vulnerability and intimacy, you're not going to be able to really participate in because it's going to be too vulnerable. It's going to be too raw. Like you're not going to be able to feel that at all.
Joe,
yeah, and I think joy is people are just as uncomfortable with joy and good emotions as they are bad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Joe, I'm thinking of years ago when you described your working situation as beige. Everything about it just felt beige. That's what, to me, I visualize when you're living in that really small margin, when you've cut off the negative and the positive, all you have left is neutral, beige. And a lot of people feel like they're living in that space.
Yeah, they're existing, but I wouldn't call that living.
It's fine at best. I mean, who wants to live a life of fine?
Yeah. Right. So it's like, I mean, Glennon Doyle isn't the other expert on this, I feel. Love Warrior is such a good book about this subject in general. But she calls life brutiful, like brutal plus beautiful. And that you can't have a beautiful life if you're not willing to accept the brutal parts of life too, and to really feel those. Because your capacity to feel is your capacity to feel. You can't turn off one area without turning off the whole thing. So I think that that's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have, is that they want the happiness and they want the joy and they want the satisfaction, but then they don't want to have to like sit and process how lonely they feel, or they don't want to have to grieve something, or they don't want to have to feel rejection and failure. And that is the toll we pay in order to have the best parts of life.
Right.
Being human is hard.
I mean, like if you want to be married, you're going to have to go on a first date, and you could risk rejection, if you do that, but the payoff could be greater.
It's like and like I can make a case for, there are plenty of people who go on first dates and aren't being themselves. They're being whoever they think that person wants them to be. So they are putting up a mask and they're not being vulnerable and they're not allowing themselves to feel. And then maybe they do end up getting married, but that person didn't marry who they thought they were marrying, and they never can really connect because they never learned how to communicate because they don't really know each other. So it's like you're getting like a hollow imitation of life.
I think you actually just hit on another really powerful case for feeling your feelings is if you're not fully expressed in who you are and you're cutting off a big part of yourself, you can't have great connections with anyone in your life.
No.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Partner, friends, kids, coworkers, parents, siblings.
Yeah, you like skim the surface with everybody, which is so sad. It's like
and then you're not known. I think people really want to be known, but that's really, really, really vulnerable.
Right,
because you could be rejected.
Right. Yeah, it requires allowing people to see you as you are. And man, that's more frightening. Hold on. Isn't there like a really great quote about this at the end of the newer Cinderella, like the live action Cinderella movie, where at the very end, she's like, this is like the hardest thing that any of us will ever do, is just like allowing someone to see us as we are.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an actual quote, but I think that's really, really true. And there's always more layers to peel back. Always. Which is one of the coolest things about being a human. There are always more layers to peel back with yourself, and there's more layers to be uncovered with your significant other. I've been with my husband since high school, so about 15 years now, and I'm still learning about him. And it is just the coolest thing. I just think he's the coolest person and the best person. And I love him so much. And there's still more for me to learn. And it's just like, oh my God.
And you're able to do that because like you're both sharing, you know, the deepest depths of what you feel. And you're not trying to pretend. And he has seen you at every, like, if I think we've seen you at every end of the emotional spectrum, he has really seen you in every potential, at every possible state that you're capable of being in. And he's accepted you in all of it. Like, that's so powerful. No wonder you love him. Like, of course you're going to love somebody who, like, holds that much space for you and, like, accepts you that deeply.
Yeah. And we've worked... In the last couple of years, I've gotten to see his emotional range too. And that is super cool. Yeah, like that he gets to become more alive and more of who he is. And I have gotten to see my own strength and resilience in holding space for him to feel his feelings.
Which brings it right back to what you were saying earlier, which is that when you get really comfortable with your own emotional expression, you can be strong and resilient in the face of other people's emotional expression, especially people really close to you who their emotions and how they feel and the choices that they make affect you.
Yeah. And even with people at work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, like you can be more effective at your job when you are willing to go there with people.
So how do we go there with people? Well, I mean, yes, how do we go there with people? But like, how do we do this? Like, how do we feel our feelings? For that person who is like, I would love to do this and it sounds really scary and I don't know, it probably is going to wreck me before it makes me, which is true. Like, you'll have to come undone before you come back together, which I feel like I do every day, by the way. Feeling your feelings is an emotional roller coaster that you never get off of, but it's probably more fun than just beige living. But how do we do it? Like, what are some actual ways we can turn our feelings back on and start to feel even when maybe we've never done it or we've spent a lifetime trying not to?
Okay, so I think that I want to start by kind of like debunking some myths that I think people have about feeling their feelings. The first is that I think people think that if they start crying, they will never stop.
100%. Yes, that is what people think.
I've thought that for most of my life.
I've never thought that, but I've always been okay with crying. But most of the people I coach who express this fear to me, like, say this. Absolutely.
It's just not true.
It's not
As a crier, I've literally been a crier since forever.
Yeah, and like, okay, hold on. When Jo says she's a crier, I don't think you guys quite understand how, like, you're never going to understand the depths of what she means if you haven't seen it. But like, you are the biggest crier that I know in the best way. That like, when you feel something, it just comes up from the depths of your soul and you let it out and you have like a really good sob about it and then it passes. Like, you literally allow it to crest like a wave and then flow out of you.
Yes. And that is exactly how to do it. So emotions are energy in motion. They need to move.
Yes. Yeah.
And you need to let them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's such a good like way to think about it. That like, yes, literally the reason you have emotion, the reason you even cry is because your body is trying to get something out.
It's like a wave. Yes. It's like needs to wave over you, but it will end. And that's what you're saying is It's not just like an ocean wave is a temporary thing, right? It will end. You will not cry forever.
The ocean will go back to being placid.
You will not be depressed forever.
Right.
Right.
So having a good long cry is obviously a good way to get your emotions out.
Yes. But also I would like to say, so I have cried, like sometimes I will cry 2 tears.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's it. That's it.
Yep, exactly. It's just a little bitty baby emotion you needed to get out.
Was, less than 5 minutes, less than 2 minutes.
Totally.
Even.
Yes.
I've also cried the entire way back from the Bahamas after my sister got married on 2 flights and through 2 airports. Tears just streaming down my face. The man sitting next to me, who was not my husband, was probably like, what is happening here? Just waterwork. Like, just.
He probably thought someone died, you know? Like,
yeah. And this is grief. This is like, in that case, it was me grieving the end of a very powerful chapter of my life, feeling like my childhood was ending.
Yeah.
And probably some like extra tears that I didn't cry around my own wedding, that I didn't cry around my parents' weddings when they got divorced and then remarried other people. And so there's doors closing. But this is like, I just let it fall. Like, it was simultaneously sad and like processing all the good that had happened in that chapter that I wanted to hold on to, and having that all reinforced. So yeah, it runs the range of like 2 minutes to like, what was that? I don't know, 6 to 8 hours. But like 6 to 8 hours is the longest cry I've had. And I would say that the majority of my cries fall in the 20 minutes and under range.
Oh, yeah. I love a good shower cry. You know, like you're just like drenched in hot water anyway. And so you just like let it out. It feels so good. There's a literal like cleansing rebirth thing happening in a good shower cry.
Yeah. I like a good workout class sob.
Oh, yeah. You've sobbed at
That's my favorite.
Cycle.
Yep. I've sobbed in yoga, because sometimes these are like mental things that I'm like crying about. And sometimes it's, especially like in yoga, we'll do the move for me that always starts the cry is hip openers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there was one time where we were like just doing like a stretch to like open my head. And I just started like, just tears just started coming out. And there's no, like nothing is happening in my like mind. It's just a release. And so I think that that's another thing that people think is that if they start to feel emotion, then they're going to have to think too much and they don't want to think.
Yeah, or they have to figure out the reason why they're crying or something. And they don't have to know. You don't have to know.
Or a solution.
Yeah, no, you can just let it out. That's such a good point.
Let it out. Just let it go.
I was going to make that point before. You were just saying I cried for 6 to 8 hours, and I'm not even sure. I could guess some of the emotions that were coming out, but I don't even really know why. They were happy, they were sad, they were nostalgic. Like, I just knew that emotion needed to move through my body. Right. And that, because we're all so mired in logic, it feels like if I'm feeling an emotion, I have to immediately pinpoint it and say, I'm feeling sad because, or I'm feeling angry because. And it might just be, you got a lot of bottled up energy that has to get out in some way. And maybe it doesn't even ever matter if you figure out what it was about.
I really don't think it does matter. Like ultimately, whether you know, I think a lot of the time we might only know, like, it's like the iceberg. We might only know the tip of the iceberg and then the rest of it is submerged. And you know, it could be like you could actually just be crying because you slept on the slightly wrong side of the bed and your body feels weird. And then you stubbed your toe and then someone was mean to you and that maybe deeply triggered something within you. And all of a sudden you're just sobbing and you literally have no idea why. And it doesn't matter. You're just getting it out. That's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we talk about another way I personally like to get out emotion, which is something that Heidi Dupree, one of our favorite people, taught me, which is literally beat the crap out of something. So this is awesome. Like if you have a lot of rage, like what she suggested was take like a baseball bat and beat your bed or the couch. I don't have a baseball bat because like sports and me, no. But I do have like dog toys, like rubber dog toys. So I beat the crap out of the couch and I can't do it for more than like a minute. It's also because I'm like aerobically not in good health probably. But there's just... But
also because you don't need to.
You can't sustain that level of like sheer rage for that long. It's so satisfying. I really highly recommend beating the crap out of like inanimate objects if you can.
Yeah, that's a good one. And that's something that you can do like without anybody around. One time, like 5 or 6 years ago, I was in a really like, I don't know, bad, dark place. And I said to my husband, I'm like, can you please just hold this pillow so I can punch it? And it was like simultaneously felt so good because I had so much rage that I was getting out. And then I was like, oh my God, I've come completely undone. And this is so vulnerable that my husband is seeing me in this state. It didn't really bother him at all. But it's like, this is the same kind of vulnerability. Like you need to have the same kind of vulnerability to process rage and like, you know, to be fully expressed in rage and grief and sadness as you do to have a really good orgasm. Like it's just so raw and like you're connected with yourself, but you just have to be able to let go.
Yeah.
Right. There's like a surrender in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You got to surrender to the flow of energy.
Right. And I think that's why people don't want to feel their feelings because it just feels so out of control.
Yes.
But like it is just a wave. Like you just let it go and then it'll come down.
Yeah.
And so I think that when you do feel emotions, just reminding yourself, I don't have to do anything about this.
Yeah. I don't have to figure anything out.
Yes. I don't have to figure anything out. It's the figuring it out. That's when the mind gets all messed up in it and it's like overload.
I also find that listening to music is a really good way because there's so much emotion in music. So I've had a couple months ago, I was really angry about something. I forget what it was.
Is this when I walked in on you listening to Pink?
I was listening to a bunch of angry Pink songs.
Which is so funny. Like that's Kristen's version of angry hardcore music is listening to Pink.
I actually looked up some other stuff and it was just so angry that it just was too much.
Yeah.
I needed something.
It's the girly version of being mad. That's so Kristen.
But it was great. Or really sad music if you're just in a place where you just need to cry it out.
Yeah.
Just listening to some or nostalgic music, even like Disney music will take me back to like a nostalgic childlike time.
Yes.
And you can really feel a lot because there's so much feeling trapped in music. So I don't know. I found that to be a really good way of enhancing the flow of energy.
Yeah.
Well, and almost giving your mind a distraction kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, music is an art and anything like that. It speaks more to the soul than the mind. So I think it's kind of like it's like a bypass to get to your emotional center. Like it bypasses your mind and it just lets you feel things and you don't have to understand it. You can just feel it and let it out when you listen or when you like watch a really good movie or something that just takes you back or a really good piece of art or something like that.
It's like tapping you into some deep, like human emotions that we all share.
So Joanna, one of the things that I feel like has worked for you that you used to talk a lot about as far as like processing your feelings and just getting them out was doing morning pages.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. So morning pages are essentially you get up in the morning and you write 3 stream of consciousness pages.
Just like in any old notebook. Yeah. You just write literally anything that you're feeling or thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is good for helping like process emotions. I think writing letters is good to help. I like all kinds of writing. Morning pages is really good to actually like quiet your inner critic, your monkey mind energy. That's really loud and it helps you kind of like work through things. And
yeah.
So it's almost like a written meditation.
Yes, exactly.
It's just like literally getting out everything that's jangling around in your mind and it's just like putting it out into the world so that it doesn't have to jangle around in your mind so much.
Exactly. If you do this for 3 days, you will literally feel like your life has changed.
Wasn't one of the stipulations that you not go back and read what you've written?
Yeah, no, you're not really supposed to go back and read what you've written for at least 8 weeks.
Interesting. I kind of like
you're
that.
supposed to do morning pages for 8 weeks before you go back and read the stuff. But frankly, I just think it's boring. There's really no reason for me to go back and read my morning pages because it's just all so much like...
It's like, who cares what I was worrying about 8 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
That's probably why you're supposed to wait 8 weeks.
And a lot of it is like really boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what to wear. I'm hungry. I want to go back to bed. Like, who cares? Nothing interesting.
I love this though, because I process a lot in writing. I know different people process emotions different ways.
Yeah, Kristen and I process emotion very differently.
So I will do a lot of, it might not always be in the morning, but I'll do a lot of journaling when I can feel the emotions bottling up and I have to get them out in some way. And it doesn't even always make sense. Like someone else reading what I wrote may not make any sense to them whatsoever. It's just a form of expression. It's just a way of releasing the tap on a bottle that's about to explode.
Mm-hmm. Having
Yes.
a good conversation with a friend too can do that. I don't know if that's just because my friends are coaches. Probably that helps.
I think you're a verbal processor.
I'm a very verbal processor.
I think there are two different types of processors, internal and external processors.
Yeah, I'm an external. Kristen's an internal for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually talk about this in my course, Engaged, because a lot of times you will be in a partnership with someone who is the opposite type of processor from you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so it's important to recognize that your partner may process things differently than you, may process feelings differently than you. It's not that they don't have feelings, they just process them in a different way. So having a conversation with a friend, and I even like to say, you don't even have to say anything. I just need to talk this out, because once it comes out of your mouth, it helps that surge and then it releases. Or, and this is why coaching is such a good thing, you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that I felt this way until the words came out of my mouth.
That is why verbal or written processing is so helpful, is because you see it or you hear it and all of a sudden you're like, wait, I think that? Or a lot of the time I have people tell me, this didn't seem like nearly as big of a deal when I saw it in writing. You know,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's another reason. So that was going back to like why I think people aren't, or the like myth that I want to debunk is that I think so with sadness, they think they won't be able to stop crying. With anger, people think that they have to do something about it.
Yeah.
And probably even with sadness too. But like if they get pissed, they'll have to do something about it. They'll have to tell the person. There will have to be some type of like conflict.
Yep. Yeah, I can attest to that.
And that's also not true.
Yeah, that's a big reason why I've been reluctant to experience or express anger for a lot of my life, is because I'm like, well, if I feel it, then what am I going to have to do? Am I going to have to be in some big confrontation? Am I going to have to cut someone out of my life? Right? It just turns into this huge, and maybe it's just, you need to beat the pillow. That's all.
Yeah.
Right.
You might need to beat the pillow before you ever open your mouth and talk to somebody, which I could probably do a little bit more of.
Absolutely. You need to process it. Like it's process first, and then you can decide to act or not later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anger, the point of anger is to put up a flag that a boundary violation has occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so sometimes that means that, you know, in like a tribal kind of thing, sometimes you want to rage against that person and push them off your lawn. Sometimes you just want to have a stronger boundary the next time.
Right.
Yeah. Anger is usually an indication that like someone has stepped on something that you value, right? Like that's why people get road rage, is because it feels disrespectful and they want to be respected. I mean, at the very core of it, you know, I mean, when I get pissed about things, it's often because I feel underappreciated, or I feel like someone doesn't value me the way I wish that they did, or that they don't care or respect something that I really care about and respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Another thing that's come to mind about how to feel your feelings is something I tell a lot of my clients, which is that when you're just sitting and doing nothing, like you're watching a show, be where you are. Like if you're watching a show, do not also be scrolling on your phone. Because I think that a lot of the time, like again, this gets back to those numbing things, but literally some people are reluctant to just sit and watch a show because they know that without even more distraction, there could be feelings bubbling up. And I just like, if you sit there and you breathe through the discomfort of that, you will get to the other side. I really like, it gets back to like, we don't trust that the wave will crest and that there will be an end, and that there always will be an end to whatever emotional peak that we're going through. And this is just like getting in physical shape. Like I hate doing planks more than just about anything in the world, but I understand that I will not be asked to hold that plank for the rest of my life, that there is a beginning and a middle and an end. And that the longer I'm capable of sitting with that discomfort, the stronger that I get. And emotionally, that is the exact same thing. The more we can sit with our emotions, the better we get at just, you know, the more emotionally healthy and fit we also get.
Doing emotional planks here. Emotional boat pose in yoga. God.
Yes. This is emotional planks, emotional boat. This is like emotional ab work that we're doing right now.
Yeah. I heard the most amazing thing. I was listening to a podcast earlier this week called Daring to Rest, and she was talking
I have her book. Yeah, I haven't read it yet, though. Is it good?
Oh, yeah. I haven't read the book. She started a podcast.
Oh, that sounds good.
And she was interviewing somebody about dream deprivation, and they were talking about how they were equating like sleep and feelings and things as like a plane landing. So planes fly above the weather.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come down to land, inevitably there's like some type of turbulence that will happen.
Right.
Yeah.
As you go through the weather. At the end of the day, when you're watching TV, when you start to wind down, like when you're watching TV at the end of the day, when you're going to bed, like this is why the numbing happens, is because all of the things that you haven't processed when you were flying above the weather during the day, they start to come to the surface as you like descend into like your really relaxed state and almost to sleep. You descend through the turbulence. And so numbing happens when people don't want to go through the turbulence. So you'll see people like trying to outrun the turbulence by being busy until they just crash at the end of the day. Like, you know, just crash into bed at the end of the day, like exhausted at the end of the day. You'll see them like watching TV while also being on their phone, watching TV while also having a drink, because you don't want to go through that turbulence. And I just loved that analogy because it is temporary. And like, you know, just imagine your feelings or even the thoughts, because a lot of what we're talking about when you're like kind of numbing and scrolling, that isn't even like a deep feeling as much as it is like a little doubt from your inner critic. We can't even like go through the turbulence of like the little questions of our inner critics to get to the feelings.
Yeah.
And so, you know, just let the thoughts, I love this visual of imagining your thoughts as like clouds that are just passing by. And so, you know, they'll come out of your line of vision soon enough and just get through the turbulence.
I mean, it's really like all feelings are just like weather.
Yeah,
it's gonna
I love
change.
That analogy.
There is like, it is not gonna rain for 40 days and 40 nights, y'all. Like, it's just not. Any feeling you have cannot physically sustain itself for that long, and you will not get trapped.
And even if it did, there's still an end, right? Even if it did last even if it was really extreme grief and it did last a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
there's still an end.
Yes. Right. Like the worst, like people dying in your life, the worst things that can happen, people eventually even recover from that. And if they can recover from that, then you can feel what your inner critic has to say for about 5 minutes.
Right.
So have we missed anything? Is there any ways of feeling your feelings that we haven't touched on yet? I feel like we've given a lot of good examples already, but I want to make sure we leave space for anything else you're thinking.
The only other one, like we talked about music, but you could like dance it out. So
like Grey's Anatomy.
Physically like move your body. Yeah, like Grey's Anatomy. Physically move your body or punch something, you know, but moving your body.
Yep.
And then the other one is also from Heidi, is what she calls, I think she calls them like vocal intonations or something.
Oh, yeah. It's basically like screaming with tone, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really what I think it is that you just open your mouth and you let whatever sound wants to come out, come out.
Yeah. It's great to do alone in your house or in the car.
Or into a pillow.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to do 10. I have such an emotional range that when I really go for it, I can only do 3 because I can hold them for quite some time.
A lot comes out. Yeah.
A lot. And I really like to do this. And the amazing thing is that this can help you release emotion without any thinking, without any talking, without, any mind things. This I really like to do before my period. Mm-hmm. When there's just a lot of like feelings like bubbling up that I don't necessarily have words for, and it feels very like out of control and wild.
Yep. Just like literally opening your mouth and letting like crazy sounds come out if you need to.
Like, I can do one. I'll cut it short, but just to give an example.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's hear it.
Take a deep breath. like that and hold it as long
literally
as you
just
can.
screaming with
You
tone.
can take a breath.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I've done that before. It's awesome. You can really go for a long time.
Oh my God. It's so cool. And you can feel the like reverberations in your body. And it's so cool.
Also, I tried something recently that I was introduced to through Kristen Kalp.
We're going to have to link to all of these people that we were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
We will.
Called Breathwork. And it's
Yes.
a way of breathing in a really particular deep pattern. And oh my God, so much emotion came out. I literally was trembling at the end of it. My hands were going numb.
I
was crying.
I didn't know what I expected when I did. I really only did one breathwork session in my whole life, and I just listened to her recording. We will link to Kristen Kalp's breathwork. But I sobbed, and I mean like from the deep well of my being sobbed. My hands literally scrunched up into a shape I couldn't get them out of for a few minutes. Like there was just literally, it's almost like I could feel energy escaping from my body, like in like huge waves. It was really cool and also incredibly uncomfortable.
Yes, very. I was like fidgety. Parts of my body were going numb. It was very strange.
But it was just like doing an emotional plank. It was a huge emotional workout, but with a huge release at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
I did like a private, like personal one-on-one breathwork session with her. And I was like, oh my God, I hate this. And like I said, I'm a feeler, like I can do this, but you just feel completely out of control. And then at the end, you're like, I am on a cloud.
Yeah.
Because
pure bliss.
You feel so much lighter because you literally just released like, who knows, like really crusty old emotional baggage.
Yeah. And I think she has one out or coming out called Lighter.
Yeah, I think that's what Kristen and I did.
I think that's right.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. She has one on receiving too that I've been meaning to do. But anyway, she's just so amazing. She has so many good resources about
feeling your feelings. Might have to get her on the podcast as an expert.
Yes, you absolutely should. Mm-hmm. She's amazing.
Joe, we could talk to you we do for like years. Yeah. Joe's one of the people in like me and Kristen's group text chain who just is constantly like we're offering emotional support and like back and forth literally all the time. So
I'll look at my phone and I'll have 40 missed text messages that are all just I needed to get this out and everyone's just supporting each other. I mean, it's great. Like on the daily. So we've got a good support network in that way. And Joe is always the one we go to when we have a lot of emotion that we need help processing.
I don't know what I'd do without you.
Thank you. I feel the same way.
Okay. Thank you for doing this. We're going to link to all of those resources. You guys should listen to Love Always Joe, which is Joanna's podcast.
And if you are engaged or soon to become engaged, she mentioned she has a course for engaged couples. It's a really, really powerful way of going into conscious marriage.
Yes, I think unless you really want to do like the religious couples counseling, this is like a really progressive and cool and easy way to do couples counseling coaching together before you get married to start off your marriage on the right foot. So, highly recommend.
Yes. Thank you for having me. And thank you for sharing all of the things that I have to offer. And if you're listening and you want somebody to help you kind of feel your feelings, obviously you can chat with Kristen or Rachel, but you can also book a session with me and we can see what you got going on in there.
Do it. All right.
Definitely.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
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 Thank you again to Joe. That was awesome.
That was such a good conversation, as I knew it would be.
So, okay, if you guys are into this topic and you want more, the episode from last week where Kristen and I had a side chat about we're not the crazy ones, is what it's called, being a highly sensitive person and how to know if you are walking around the world being an empath or a highly sensitive person, and maybe you don't even realize it. There's very related to what we just talked to Joe about.
A lot of overlap because sensitive people feel a lot, but they can also sometimes try to cut that off because it can feel so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so if this episode resonated with you and you haven't listened to last week's, you're definitely going to want to go back and see if that might apply to you, because a lot of people who are attracted to the world of coaching, I find that a lot of them are pretty sensitive.
Yeah, most of my clients are pretty sensitive. So also my interview with Kyle Ramsvig, it's called You Can't Cure the Human Experience with Kyle Ramsvig. We also got into a lot of similar things, obviously, because all of this, when you get down to it, it's kind of coming from the same core. So we're just kind of approaching similar things from different angles. And if you're new to Clarity on Fire, and I just want to make sure, because a lot of you are probably discovering us for the first time, especially because this podcast is new, and you don't know where to start with us, but you want more, go to clarityonfire.com and take the Passion Profile quiz. This has been taken, 300, 400,000 times, somewhere in between there,
Something like
probably. It's a very easy, quick way to start to pinpoint the intersection between your career and your passion. You get a PDF debrief of what your passion profile is and what it means and what that would maybe look like to apply to your career and your life moving forward.
This has been a game changer for a lot of people's careers.
Yes.
And it'll help you understand yourself and possibly why you feel out of place or out of sorts in your current job if you're not loving what you're doing. It will give you a lot of insight and clarity into that. So definitely make sure you take our quiz if you are brand new to Clarity on Fire.
And we will see you, we'll see you on Tuesday with a new blog, and we will also see you next Friday with a new Dear Rachel. And if you want to submit a question for Dear Rachel, I'm going to link to that in the show notes. And bring us anything, okay? We'll see you next time.
Bye.